Yes, hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to the final session, in fact, here at HCI 2025, and it's a good one. You're not going to want to miss this, because as we know, ladies and gentlemen, we are faced with one of the worst crises of our time, and as we all know, that is, of course, the climate emergency. But it's situations like this, in fact, that really put human potential to the test. So it's time now that we turn our attention to how sustainability and climate-driven innovation can really spark the kind of human genius that we really need today. So I'm delighted to have an exceptional panel lined up for this last session. But before we do the introductions, I'm going to hand over now, in fact, to Charles Hopkins, who is the UNESCO Chair in Reorienting Education towards Sustainability at York University, Canada. Charles, why don't you start us off?
Well, thank you very, very much, and thank the organizers for this opportunity. It's wonderful that we're actually addressing sustainability in a context of capabilities. I can't think of any attribute or capability that is more important at this point than dealing with the future of the planet. So it was kind of disappointing during this whole time here today. I haven't heard sustainable development goals. I haven't talked to or haven't heard that much about this topic. At any rate, I think when we come to attributes, I think of them and the capabilities, what's behind this whole conference, at two levels. We've been dealing primarily with capabilities on a personal level. Right. But we should also be thinking about them on a societal level. And I haven't heard that much about it, and I'm sorry that that's happened. As I say, the idea of embedding these kinds of attributes into our education systems at all levels is extremely important. Education is society's way of preparing our future generations, giving them the capabilities that are so needed. There are four basic areas in education: to know, to do, to be all you can, and to live together. Those are the four big ones that UNESCO has developed and put out. But that living together, we need to shift when we look at the calamities and what is going on around the world at this moment. When we say to live together, we must say sustainably, right? To live together sustainably has to be the new way. And with others, where others isn't limited to other human beings. It's about all life. So I hope that we can bring AI and economic attributes and capabilities and so on into the discussion. But what is the purpose? What is the purpose of all this? We need to have that kind of a discussion. So I'll throw that out for openers. Thanks.
Very, very well said, and that leads us perfectly into this discussion. As you mentioned, human capabilities, really embedding this at every single level. So I wanted to turn over to Thama Al-Shahan, Chairman of the Board of Directors for the Energy and Water Academy. Really fantastic to have you here. Now, you very much focus on providing young Saudis with high-quality training in terms of energy, water, and other related sort of areas as well. And you've led some major initiatives as well at the EWA. So why would you say, in your mind, is vocational education and training, why is it so important for the green transition?
Thank you for the question. And I might try to simplify the question and then I'll try to answer it. Because everybody, when they talk about the AI, they talk about renewable, digitalization, they think that you need scientists and you need sophisticated engineers to do work. But let me explain the whole chain of the work associated. So we have equipment manufacturer. You need somebody to build the equipment, make the equipment. You need construction team to build those renewable plants or anything that's related to climate change. You need a builder. You need an operator, people to operate, and you need also people to lead that chain. So it's not only engineers and scientists. So you need paraprofessionals who can operate as well. So our academy provide that missing piece of the chain and allow the graduate to have hands-on experience on how to keep, like what Charles said, in their paradigm and their mind. For example, we are right now, our academy is 100% works on renewable energy. The first phase was built by our students. So they get the feeling how they can convert those theories into practice. Your question, if I remember right, you said also other initiatives I think we feel proud of. What we did also on the academy, we have embarked of a couple of initiatives. One of them, we were part of leading workforce development program that we look for the unemployment sector within the country who were having like history major, who has art studies or religious, and we reskill them to be renewable engineers, to be safety officers and whatever, in a very short program between 6 to 8 months. And the result was really amazing, as many companies have transformed their hiring strategy, and they start looking for this. So we have a lot of activities we have been doing in that field, in the other initiative in the institute. We also did a lot of work related to like cars, working on electrical cars and whatever. So these are what I want to share. Thank you.
Really impressive initiatives there. And as you mentioned, it's this practical experience that very much embeds that type of education into your students. I mean, that's the proper way to learn at the end of the day as well. But Jonathan Ledger, really wonderful to have you here, Skills and Personal Body Specialist for the Department of Trade and Business for the United Kingdom. Now, educational institutions are often criticized for lagging behind industry needs. So what changes do you think need to be made to make sure that graduates aren't just aware of sustainability, but they very much are, equipped to actually drive innovation themselves?
Thank you so much indeed, and a real pleasure to be here this afternoon. Actually following on from the last speaker, but there's a big gap between education institutions and green skills in the sense that employers need and industry needs. There is some areas where it moves closer together, but generally most institutions don't work in the pocket of industry sectors. And so how do they know what the latest green developments are? So I'm not talking about greenwashing, where we just add the word green to the front of something. We're really talking about taking sustainable development goals, looking at the whole chain of skills and training, right from labour market information all the way through to curriculum development, standards, occupational skills standards, and out the other side in terms of certification. And how do we make sure that that curriculum really truly demonstrates sustainability in all of its processes and teachings? I think the other part is around how employers can work really closely with the institutions to retrain the teachers. So I give a couple of examples. If we look at something like 3D printing, which has come in, there are 3 or 4 standards of it around the world, but it keeps changing every year. How does a teacher keep up to date with that? Really, they've got to be in industry to truly understand it. So if employers and industry and institutions work closer together, you will help keep the teachers up to date. That means that young people get the right kind of skills. But I think it goes further down the education line. So I think we have to start in secondary education. We have some programs in the UK around green skills, looking at, for example, the print sector, sustainable printing, packaging, all of that. And it starts at the age of 8. And I think it's a mindset shift that you have to make with young people and get them on board with the message of sustainability. And then when they grow up, they will love it so much that they carry on doing it and it's part of their normal work. For us, as older people, we've lived in a world that didn't, that care that much for climate, and so we're kind of having to make adjustments, and that's different to being born like it. Does that make some sense? But I think, yeah, industry play a big part, and I work in 78 countries, and I work closely with the likes of UNESCO and ILO and others around the world, and what we really lack is a partnership between industry and skills bodies to make skills truly happen in this sector. There are bits of it happening, but in most countries, they have an occasional word with an employer, and they call that employer engagement, and it's not. You really need to kind of be in bed together all the way through the process.
Really marry the two. There's still a lot to be done.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, really embedding this at a very young age so that next generation knows of the importance.
It needs to be like normal behaviour, unconscious behaviour rather than conscious behaviour.
Yeah.
And that's what we're not at yet.
Yeah. Very well said. Radia Sadawi also joins us, Chief of Energy, Climate Change and Natural Resource Sustainability Cluster at UNESCO, which was very much set up to promote cooperation between member countries across Western Asia. And I know that you lead on energy transition and climate change regionally across the MENA region. So I was wondering whether you could maybe give us your take on how education systems can very much better prepare future generations. What do you think needs to be done?
Thank you very much, and I think the other speakers at the stage, when we speak about the just energy transition, the just is important, and independently what you said yourself, be it a rich country where you have the capacity in order to reform your education system, or you don't have, and this is where globally the question is. Definitively that the just energy transition, which is at the core of the sustainability, it's about the human capital before speaking investment in terms of infrastructure. And definitively education as the core from the primary school to the universities and the research. The major skills gap, maybe I want to indicate, starting with the sustainability aspect, which we cannot dissociate between the economic, the social, and the environmental aspect. And the issue of the education that we have currently is not integrated, and the integrated approach is not there yet. And this is at all levels of the education system. More importantly, that with this just energy transition, we come up that we have a huge skills gap when it comes to what we have in the marketplace compared to what we are looking for. Specifically, the skills gaps come how the education system can cope with. Number one is the cross-sectoral coordination, specifically the water and energy and agriculture as an example, and biodiversity, especially in this region where we suffer from climate change and land degradation, desertification, water scarcity. So the skills that we need to have in the education system, we really need to embed this and ensure that we have engineers, be it in energy, electricity or water, for example, very much understanding the cross-coordination between the sectors and the technologies. And number two, I would say also in terms of the education system, is the inequality and the social justice. We speak in how we, in the region, for example, and in the kingdom, how we progress as much in the gender aspect, but the social aspect, actually, we can address the social aspect between disability on the gender if we change in the education system at the outset, how the social norms need to be embedded in order that you adjust the unemployment that we have today, but also you have more educated people who understand the social and economic and the environment at the same time. But more importantly, also, I would say that the integrated approach needs to look at the whole value chain, and this is where the education system is missing. It's not about renewable energy, it's really about the whole value chain. This is what would make the difference.
Very well said. You mentioned the skills gap there, which leads me on very nicely to Peter Terriam, who is the sector head of energy for NEOM. Really fantastic to have you here as well. Now, NEOM, as we know, is going all out on renewables. It's known as the land of the future. So and how on earth do you get the right skill sets for a project of that size? Because I mean, we are looking at quite a big skills gap at the moment as well. And a recent report stated that 1 in 3 companies faces challenges when it comes to the right skill set in sustainability. And tell us a little bit more about how NEOM relates to the Human Capital Initiative at the same time.
Yes, happy to do so. And I'm a bit fascinated to hear how the discussion is very much focused on education and academic systems to prepare people. We know that most learning you do after school. Most development of capabilities is being done outside of school. So where does NEOM fit in this? Yeah, to create an environment in which capabilities can be further developed. And let me make that link there, because NEOM is known as land of the future. Now, future is about innovation, but we know that today's innovation is tomorrow's history. The only constant factor is the people. It's the people capabilities and how they develop. So it's about human capability development. And what you need for that, and I loved what Charles said, you need a sustainable environment that looks at a long-term solution, because we know if we continue to do the things as we have done them and are doing them now, it will not be sustainable for the further outgoing future. So we have to do things different, which means it's about mindset. Because also on capabilities, I can dare to say that the capabilities you learn and you need today will not be the capabilities that you will need, in 1 month, 1 year, and in 10 years. So it's about creating that environment that is sustainable, looking at a long-term future and perspective. And then I think it's about more than hard capabilities, it's about mindset. And your mind is focused by a purpose. And that is what NEOM is about. The purpose of NEOM is to create the land of the future, to crack the nut on solving problems that we currently have at hand, which are not typical for NEOM. Global warming, arid environment, access to nature, livability, all of those aspects. If we can solve them for NEOM, we can help to solve them for the world. Now that is a beautiful purpose to be part of, and that is the kind of mindset we are looking for, and the kind of curiosity in going outside of today's boundaries to look for this path to the future.
So it's more of a mix of sort of outsourcing talent and also upskilling and reskilling within the ecosystem.
Well, I would say it's more creating an environment, and what drives that environment and what drives innovation, and we talk about mindset, is also diversity. So we're not looking at one mold of people, we're looking at diverse people, because innovation doesn't have a passport. It doesn't have a cultural background or an age background or what have you. So creating that diverse environment and making that work, diversity only works when there is inclusion, and inclusion is being driven by working for the same purpose. So diversity and that purpose are very well an important recipe of creating an environment in which capabilities can be developed, further on. We'll pick them up from university, and of course we will cooperate and make sure that they have the hard skills that you need. But I think it's also important that the educational system looks at mindset topics. How do we make people feel comfortable with being outside of the comfort zone? Because that's how you embrace and go to new barriers. That's scary. And how do you deal with that? That is something which is way beyond the laws of physics or anything like that. That's developing personality. That is giving them a starting point from where we can take them on and have that environment in which they can continue to develop those capabilities.
Very, very impressive indeed. Now, we've spoken about collaboration. That's been touched on a little bit here and there. And Charles, as you mentioned, it's vital that we include sustainability into the education system, really embed it, in fact. We've spoken about collaboration. There's obviously the government, there's educational institutions, but what about public support in all of this? How important is that?
Yeah, but public support is crucial. Politicians, at least in Canada, their main goal is not necessarily good government. It's more about staying in power. And I think that's true of most countries. So until we can build public support to support enlightened leadership when it shows, that's important. It's public support to understand the radical change that's needed in education. Right now, it's our most educated countries in the world that are creating the greatest problems. Think of that. we need to have some very profound change. We need to clarify the purpose, well-being for all, forever, building in compassion and so on. You can't do that to an education system without public support and public calling for it. So even changing how we think about it. Right now, we build sustainability around fear and about giving up something. What we have to do is change. We need to work with social scientists, psychologists, and so on to figure out new ways of talking about it, new ways of presenting it, and new positive approaches.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We are running out of time. But moving on to Thama there, what do you think is standing in the way of faster innovation? Is collaboration the key to sort of getting it right the first time?
Well, if I look at the challenges, I used to be working with the private companies where I receive all the talents which have been coming from the system, and now I am responsible of providing talents to the system. So I could see from all. So I would say number one challenge in mismatch between the quality and number. Majority of the systems, education system and the workforce system, in many countries, they work on supply more than the demand, what's needed, but they go and supply more talent than what is needed in the market. Also the quality, and if I look about the sustainability and the area of renewable and the climate change, majority of those skills were not available 5 to 10 years ago. So we are talking about new skills, we're talking about new education, new curriculum and whatever. We're not talking about the conventional, what has been for a very long time. And also at the same time, even though it has been very short time, but they are evolving. I will give you a story. We built one laboratory in our academy, and after 6 months, we realized that we need to replace them to make sure that we are up to speed in the market. So this was one area which is about a skill match. Second, I would say also society awareness gap. Still, we need to make sure that the society, they know that the sustainable jobs are there, attractive, and they are for long term. We need to have it embedded in people's mindset that for sustainability start from early education. And I like Charles and Peter when they said about, so we need to build from the beginning, because people think that knowledge is changing, technology is changing very quickly, and they'll be left behind. And so we need to make sure that we put... Also, there are companies, I would say, the short-term thinking. So we know that sustainability and renewable, you need investment. You need to put upfront investment, and it is paying dividend for long term. So for short term, they may slow down and they may not move forward. I would say another element is institutes, colleges, and academy. They have been doing this conventional teaching for a very long time. So to change and update their curriculum and methodology may be of problem.
Thanks so much. Sadly, we are running out of time. So I'm heading back over to Jonathan very quickly. Now, many employers, they know the urgency of sustainability, but very much struggle in terms of investing into this new type of skill set at the same time. So what is the best strategy for businesses in order to actively, cultivate these different types of green skills?
That's a really good question. I think there's two parts. One is turn skills into business speak, because there's a return on investment. UK studies on apprenticeships, for example, in green, show that an apprentice within their first year, for every £1 you invest, you get 7 back. We don't talk about the business proposition of skills. We talk about the skills gap, skills shortage, and the cost of that. We don't talk about the investment and the growth and the return that we get, and treat it like a proper commodity. And we would do that if we were buying a big machine. We would look at the 5-year life cycle of that machine and say, how much does it cost, how much will we make, and we'd look at it in those terms, but we don't do that with people. So that's the first thing. I think the other thing is we have to recognize skills as the #1 topic in every country I go to. So I work in 78 countries, and every minister tells me skills, skills, and skills. The problem is skills gets the least investment in all countries. So higher education pours billions into higher education. We get lots of clever people with certificates, and the problem is we've still got a skills problem. So why are we investing all that money when actually we should be coming back and looking at the base skills that we need and thinking about how sustainability fits into those skills and driving it from the bottom up. By the time they get to university, with all due respect, it's a bit late.
So Radia, in your mind, how do you think climate action can actually help create jobs at the same time? And, you know, especially for women and underserved communities, what does it mean for them? And what are the biggest and most urgent skills gaps in the sector?
Yeah, I think climate crisis as a global crisis, it needs global collaboration, but also regional and national collaboration. And specifically for those who are in need, as you did mention, for privileged communities, it needs integrated solutions where decentralized systems, for example, you did mention renewable energy, in all areas where you have the issues of access, the focus on human capital, especially women and youth, they are the drivers. If you build their capacity through an integrated solution, so you equip them with the renewable energy solutions, decentralized solutions. You give them the right capacity building, not just for the energy, but for the productive sector, like the agriculture and ecotourism and all of that. But more importantly, also you help them to build their capacities in water management and all the solutions that can be decentralized, but help also to address the access gap, to address the gender balance, but more importantly, also to create communities that are resilient. But certainly, the also reverse knowledge when it comes to the solutions that work in, for example, Latin America, can also work in sub-Saharan Africa, and this is where the added value to add. But since you mentioned also that, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is investing also through the Sustainability Fund a lot in these vulnerable communities, and focusing also on the gender aspect and focusing how these decentralized solutions can help to address the last mile.
Thank you so much. Very well said. And finally, back over to Peter. Let's talk about NEOM for a little bit. What specifically do you think the energy sector in NEOM can very much contribute to human capital then, rounding up?
Well, I talked about the environment that NEOM is going to be. But in order to build NEOM, you first need to build the critical infrastructure. And water and energy is part of that critical infrastructure. So what Tamar mentioned as the example of the 100% renewable supply for your academy, that is what we're doing in energy right now in an XXXL format. So imagine the learnings that your students had there in an early phase. That's how they can have them, you know, within energy in NEOM. And I think the challenge, you know, we're not going for 60% renewables, 80% renewables, 90% renewables. No, 100% renewable. Yeah, because less bad is not good enough. And you will see a shift of mindset if you put the bar not at 99.9, but put them at 100, yeah? Then you suddenly have to go into different thinking, different working, and different solutions. And that's the environment that specifically in energy we can already offer right now.
Sadly, time is never on our side in these sessions. We cannot thank you enough, though, for being with us here today, for sharing so openly. Still a lot to be done, but a lot of progress that's being made, which is brilliant to see. So thank you so much to all of our panel. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for our final panel.